Hi,
Hi,
my name is Jenny.
and my name is Federico.
We sat here spontaneously, and we're in the middle of a very busy quarter of town. So maybe you can hear the birds around us, the people, the streets, and we also are sitting on some huge rocks that maybe we can blend in. Yeah, why did we come here? Well, we came here because we're kind of in a process right now, and we notice deeply how the process is connected to a collective process happening right now, which is collective grief. And that's kind of what we're feeling, the collective grief, the global grief, but also many of our community people are in a grief ceremony right now, gathering together around a sacred fire to hold that grief as community. And yeah, that's a very beautiful thing happening right now that we feel deeply connected to, and we've also been wondering why we're not there, why life called us to be in other places, which we then notice is very much connected to our own individual grief processes as well. And yeah, we've been taking some time to sit and reflect, and we've noticed so many symbols coming through to us, so many messages revealing themselves, and we felt it would be beautiful to sit down and maybe share some of that with you, so that anyone who feels a call to listen right now maybe feels connected to these symbols as well.
And a call to open and share from the heart what everyone is experiencing in its individuality, because this is a collective process, but that feels very individual. So there are multiple voices to talk about what grief is, but also how it can be experienced towards a state of transcendence, going beyond the normal way of perceiving grief.
And grieving is something also that, I think when we think of grieving, we wish to be in solitude, to go away, to go alone on a long journey to the edge of the mountain. Yeah, and so with grief, we sometimes feel like it's this process that we really want to go through alone in solitude. We want to go away. We want to go to the edge of the mountain and to the river and pour out our hearts, and then once we feel ready, once we have grieved enough, we are able to return back to society. But oftentimes that's not the reality of it, and grief is something that we are doing in the midst of it all, in the midst of our daily life, in the time that we are at work, in the moments we're tending to our children, in the moment that we are even also laughing and maybe smiling, but still in a process of grieving. So I do think it's very symbolic that we just chose to sit down in this place, just in the middle of the city, talking about this process with life continuing to happen all around us, because that's kind of what this grief often feels like.
Indeed. And is that grief is a natural state of life. It's part of the cycle of movement. So what happens when the season changes? We see that's beauty that was perceived for so long. Now it's moving into something that does not feel that beauty. But that anyway brings a message wherever we are. We can perceive it. It's undeniable. And because it's undeniable, we can really experience it from the heart, because it's there.
Yeah, it's not only undeniable, it's also something that we can't schedule or choose, right? It comes to us and we're confronted with it in the moment, no matter if we had plans or if we were busy. And so it's something that we then have to deal with. And I do feel that it's important to deal with it. And it can also be important, and I think this is very context-based, very individually can shift, but to not let it take everything away from us either. But I do think it's also important to give it space to be heard, to give it space to be felt and to be processed, so that then we can also restore the balance in tending to other things that need to be tended to as well. Kind of what I just said with going to the mountain, that sometimes grief is that process. Sometimes it is that I need to drop everything, I need solitude, don't talk to me for 3 weeks, I'm grieving, and then like the metamorphosis of a butterfly, you know, cocooning, but it's not always like that. And for me, at least right now, it feels very challenging to know what are the things that need to be left behind right now, what is this more important thing that needs to be tended to, and where is it becoming a repetition, where is it becoming a story, a distraction, an illusion, where is it becoming where is the disruption necessary, and where needs to be, where does a boundary need to be set for disruptions? We actually have a very significant transit happening right now from the astrological perspective, and it's a square between Saturn and Mercury that are in conjunction, and the planet of Pluto.
And
sorry, not Saturn and Mercury, the Sun.
Sun and Mercury.
The Sun and Mercury right now are conjunct, or they were conjunct yesterday, and now they're squaring Pluto.
And Pluto is this energy that undeniably has to be experienced because it's the last boundary in the solar system. And collectively here, in these early experiences, is that last state. Is that moment in which things just move on into a totally different, into a radical state. And that therefore, just sometimes accepting it, that radical change is what is required, well, it's not an easy step, because it's just saying, yeah, that is the next movement. Yeah, accepting it. So the Sun and Mercury there in a square with Pluto is this sense of individuality, of my personal experience of pain, of my personal experience of being connected to something and suddenly not feeling that connection anymore. Yeah, of experience care, of experience a connection, and then radically not anymore. And of course, since Mercury is there, it's just this sense of like, I really feel it, I can understand it. It's more of an intellectual, more a reasonably state. Yeah. But then that's why when we look for the fact that it's a collective sense, we transcends that idea that it's only formed in the mind. Yeah. And that the mind somehow, the idea of grief, for example, are getting in touch with Pluto, also need to transcend.
Yeah, you bring in a connection, is that because of Libra?
Indeed, yeah, because the Sun and Mercury are in Libra right now.
Yeah, so Sun and Mercury are in Libra and Pluto is in Capricorn. And what it feels like to me is also the Sun and Mercury are both kind of messengers of cognitive processes, and the Sun being very related to our identity, our conscious thought, our conscious self, our cognitive self, our rational self, our kind of brain self, and Mercury as well being a messenger, connecting very much for me to the nervous system, So also these neurological connections that are being formed in the brain are being highlighted right now, because then Libra is not only about connections from me to the outer world, but it's also the connection from me to me, and my inner world to my outer world, and my different levels in the body to the different other levels. So like my cells speaking to my organs, or the neurons speaking to the hormone receptors, or please excuse if I'm using wrong terminology, but you get the point. And the Sun Mercury conjunction is kind of like really a moment of rewiring with the tension to Pluto right now. It's also right now, I think, really important of how we deal with the emotional, psychological, and psychosomatic connections that are being made through the changes in our life, but also through how we deal with grief, how we experience pain. And I've been thinking about this last week, because with all of these things going on, a worry that came to me was, we've done so much work healing as a collective, years of trauma, years of ancestral trauma, years, decades and centuries of pain and hurt. And what happens when simultaneously there is new pain and new hurt created elsewhere, that then the next generations have to keep healing and keep healing the same things and keep healing the same processes. So I feel right now, having reached a new level of awareness, a new level of ascension within humanity and individually, it's an opportunity to deal with it better already now, while it's happening, to already implement and integrate. And that's why it's beautiful right now that there's a ceremony happening for grief, and that there's always in times of despair, in times of catastrophe, and in inhumanity, it's the humanity that also shows up holding each other, grieving together, so that we can regulate each other's nervous systems in the now, so that we can also try to minimize the damage done while things are still continuing, and that will also help us deal with the situation, find solutions, find ways to be active, find ways to actually implement the change that we see is important right now, that we want to represent.
Because moving on from a state of deep emotional experience does not mean just let it go and just keep doing your stuff. Yeah, it is actually recognizing that its emotional trauma has a history. Yeah, like we receive it from generation to generation. Some of it also has been experienced here. Yeah, but when there is a lack of recognition of historical trauma, then the individual just gets to feel all of it, but does not know from where. Yeah, and that's where easily we can get confused on, like, what are we dealing with? What is this set of emotions? What is the history of it? Yeah, it's a history that transcends to my personal experience, that is very much connected to the sense of connection with a wider sense. Yeah, and of course we can sense in this human experience, in this embodiment, therefore it's very much connected the same shape that we see around other humans. And it can be sensed differently, but is that sense of connection with other humans what allows to see, like, wait, this shape is everywhere. So the history is everywhere. And when we gather, well, we find dots that connect, and then it's easier to digest it, and then it's easier to recognize the tools that we already have.
Yeah, one of the symbols that has been coming through really strong today is that of the dove. Quite literally, physically, many dozens and dozens of pigeons and doves that were just right in front of us, and were mesmerizing, and we're also so loud. Like, I noticed that the birds today, they're chirping so much louder than I usually perceive them.
Yeah.
But also these doves, they were just even the flapping of their wings sounded so much more present than I've ever witnessed it. And they were gathering, all of these dozens of pigeons were gathering on one spot because there had been bird seeds put there on the ground, and so they were enjoying that. And to me, the dove is really or not only to me, but for many cultures, the dove is a representative of peace, right? A messenger of the Holy Spirit in the body, a representation of that. And it's also a symbol of angelic being. It's a symbol of the angelic frequency that is all around us. It also is a symbol of being overlooked and overseen. It's like a beauty that is being overlooked and overseen because it's so present, because it's so normal. Like, we all know pigeons, and even there's so many pigeons that they're sometimes even perceived as a plague, yeah, or as dirty, called like the rats of the sky, and there's so much negative association with them that their beauty is being overlooked. And that's sometimes also what happens when there's so much despair and there's so much negativity. We start overlooking all of these little tiny moments of beauty. We start overlooking all of the actions of peace, and we get into this mind state where we perceive the world as one big war happening, where we see all of the violence, all of the hate, but we overlook every single moment in which someone has been compassionate. We overlook every single moment in which someone has helped another person, and in which that humanity has been restored and lived, and that peace has been thriving. And it can be so important to start noticing and recognizing those moments as well, for our nervous systems, to help us get through the day and be regulated, but also to anchor into that feeling of hope, because it's that hope that allows all of our other feelings to become motors of action. If we have a lot of feelings and a lot of anger and a lot of insight about what things would need to change, and there's no hope, and we don't feel hope, and we get depressed and we don't do anything, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. So it's that hope that becomes the anchor for everything else, for all of the other healing to happen. And I think these doves were a beautiful representation that hope needs to be fed. Yes, it needs to be given food consciously, actively.
Yeah, because it's always there.
Yes, and I think it's beautiful, to really utilize that metaphor and think about how can you in your life nourish the hope inside of you. How can you nourish the peace inside of you? And how can you nourish the hope and the peace in others and give them that food as well? And together nourish our spirit in a way that helps us regulate ourselves better, so that we can actually be more present and more grounded, and so that we can continue moving.
Yeah. So we've been sensing why it's been like this today, and symbols are showing all the time. We're close to Samhain, and Samhain is the midpoint between autumn and winter, and it's known as Halloween as well. Here in the north of Europe, before we get to know the pumpkins,
It's called Samhain.
Samhain.
Not many people know how to pronounce Samhain correctly, and I don't know honestly if I'm saying it 100% correct either, but I think it's pronounced Samhain.
Here in North Europe, before the pumpkins arrived to celebrate all the imagery of Halloween, beets were used. The beetroot.
Beetroots and sugar beets.
Yeah.
And they were carved. So the original jack-o'-lantern comes from carved beetroots. But yeah, the beetroot is also a food.
Indeed.
I mean,
Indeed.
Primarily.
Indeed. And we enter in this beautiful cafe because we feel like there's something that we need to organize it, to speak it, to share it. Yeah. And then the person that is attending the place offers beet juice to us. And these times, of course, require of what metaphorically the beetroot represents, because it carries iron. The body needs iron to survive, because the iron is what allows oxygen to go through the whole body through blood.
I was just thinking of iron and irony.
Oh, so.
I don't have any immediate thoughts about it. It just made itself noticeable.
Yeah. No, I think that it's an irony as well, because things are so evident. Yeah, are so evident. So we have this symbolism of the beet that is there. Is a food that we require for the personal experience to be really felt consciously, because if we don't have enough oxygen in the body, well, thoughts, feelings, experience is not really experienced. Yeah, so we need of iron, so oxygen can go through the whole body. And these kind of symbols have been coming through the day, because if we want to really go through something, we need of the tools. And the tools are essentially here already. The abundance of beets here and being offered. The abundance of doubts.
Yeah, and I feel like the topic of food or even digestion is really significant right now, because depending on how we digest things, food, information, media, ideas, beliefs, how we digest that depends on, it changes how the nutrients can be taken, yeah? So digesting things differently enables us to extract different information, different wisdom, different sensations and emotions from that. And how we digest things is connected to how we prepare things for digestion, and what support do we give our bodies to digest. Yeah, what aids do we have helping us, but also how is it prepared. And this is relating to the symbol of the teeth. So the teeth are helping us chew and make smaller the food that we receive, preparing. And the more we chew, the slower we eat. The longer we chew, the more we pre-process this food, we can digest it and extract, our bodies can extract it better. That's why sometimes when we eat too fast, we get a little bit of a nauseous stomach. And when we learn to eat slow, we are helping our body because we're already preparing it. And the teeth are an important symbol right now because it keeps showing up as reflections through the tarot, which is a sequence of the wisdom of life as archetypes playing out stories again and again. And one of the archetypes that is super present right now is the 21, which is the world. And it's 21 minutes.
21 minutes, right?
That we've been talking right now. It's because life writes itself, and we're just witnessing and we're detecting as life detectives. And the 21 is the adept. It's the story of initiation where we understand better how to actually navigate the world, where we have gone through a whole process of evolution, of understanding ourselves, and we're now able to implement the knowledge that we've received. We're able to implement the balance, understanding how to balance the forces within us. And one of these forces is the force of change and evolution. And these are the same forces that are creation and as well are destruction. It's the same force that is creating is also destroying. And I think that's something we humans really struggle with as a concept. We don't want to let go of physical things. We don't want to let go of our physical bodies. We're afraid of death. We see death as something violent, and we tend to see that even in the most natural causes. Yeah, of course there's violence sometimes, but I do think we have a general issue with death, and not everyone, of course, and there are many cultures that celebrate death.
But most of the collective mind feels that as a really extreme experience.
And something to be avoided or prolonged, or something that is almost like a failure. You know, if we let something die, if we let something go, we interpret it as a failure. But at the same time, it's a beginning. At the same time, it's a success of something else coming through to create something else. And these teeth are representing that card. It's connected to ancient letters and pictorial symbols, and the teeth are the symbol, and teeth are also wisdom. Yeah, because the longer we grind that information, the more wisdom we can extract from it. So right now, what we can do is be really conscious about how are we consuming all of the information that is being given to us. How are we digesting it? How much do we have to digest right now? Are we giving our body the time and the space to digest that?
Are we chewing enough?
Are we chewing enough? Are we chewing long enough? Slowly enough? Pre-processing? And what wisdom are we extracting from it? What nutrients are we extracting from it? And how do we digest it?
Because if we get used to simply digest for the sake of digesting, but not really getting into the sense of like what digestion creates in the body, then it's the same thing that when we get attached to relationships, to a sense of connection to anything, that is gonna just create a state of stagnancy. And at the moment, this square that is going between the Sun, Mercury, along with Pluto, it is happening in conjunction with the South Node there in Libra. And the South Node is that anchor that reminds us where we have been, from where we come from, but it also shows us that from there we move on. If we do not move on from there, well, then reality is just gonna get within a square, within an idea, of what is to be connected, of what is to relate, but that's it. So all of this state of going beyond something that can be just felt extreme, because that's what happened with the South Node, that whatever that it's outside of that, of the South Node, of what we know, feels like really unknown. But it's precisely the connection with the unknown.
And it's also with the tarot always a continuation of a process. So this is not just something happening. The grief that we experience is not just something coming out of nowhere, if you will. It's a continuation of a story. It's a continuation of an emotion, a continuation of a process that has already taken place somewhere else, and now we get to see it from a different moment, from a different level of evolving through it. And we see these connections with the numerology in the tarot. So the 21, the card, is kind of like a flipped 12, and that card is the card of the Hanged One. also called the martyr, and its pictorial symbol is that of a staff. It represents a devotional sacrifice being made, and it's also connected to the letter that represents the concept of the heart, the word of the heart. So it's kind of connecting us to the heart energy and understanding what sacrifices do we need to make right now through the wisdom of our heart in order to be able to transcend and apply the wisdom to the world that needs to be lived and carried out right now and needs to be expressed. And through that, maybe we need to sacrifice an old belief that we have, or something that our heart wants to hold on to, but actually our evolved heart knows that for the bigger picture, this is what humanity needs. Like a little action of empathy, or saying yes to something that you usually condemn because you understand that someone is in need of help right now, or taking the higher road and letting go of that 40-year-old grudge against one of your relatives because you just realize that now is actually the time to come together and support each other, and not the time to continue holding on to wounds and pain and wanting things that have maybe even already been resolved within still needing to be carried out in the outside world. Because once we have resolved something within, we should not need to then continue carrying that out. So once we've resolved an emotion, it would be natural that the outside then also changes and our actions and behaviors change. So this is really calling about taking the higher road from the heart and understanding the importance of the heart state of body for us all to connect to as an anchor. Anchoring ourselves into our hearts again and again. And that does not mean not feeling the pain. It doesn't mean being happy all the time. It doesn't mean dancing and laughing and just being a bundle of joy all the time. It means making the painful sacrifices because we know deep in our hearts that it aligns with lessening the pain of the soul, that it aligns with restoring the hope, restoring the faith, and that it aligns with the evolution that we want to be a part of. And being able to discern our heart's voice from other voices is something that will probably help us right now. The sun is going to travel soon, and that's also life. Like, no matter how crazy things get, like, one thing is sure, it's gonna change. We're gonna help change it, and it is going to change and move forward. Nothing is gonna just stay stagnant. And yeah, we can help be that change and move things in ways. But yeah, the sun is also moving, and it's no longer gonna be squaring Pluto, but it's actually gonna be trining Saturn, and it's gonna be both water signs, so Scorpio and Pisces. And to me, Saturn is really also about devotion and understanding that devotion and making that devotional sacrifice. It's about understanding consistency and commitment and committing to something and following through with that. And the sun in Scorpio, I think, will help our rational self to uncover the deeper layers of how we think about things and how our rational mind moves us, and where we can there make alterations.
Yeah, and with Saturn there, the 0 degrees of Pisces is representing the whole spectrum of Pisces. It is the collective mind, the subconscious, the connection with everything beyond any concept, any boundary. So yeah, the sun is
also transcending old spiritual beliefs.
Indeed.
Is Saturn still retrograde?
Yes.
Yeah, it's to me also about really revisiting the spiritual beliefs that have led to our devotion, that have led to the sacrifices we've made, and really also checking if that aligns with the present moment, if that aligns with the developed self, with the evolved soul that is present in the now, and where old belief systems are no longer actually serving what they promise, serving what the hope was that was the initial seed for them, and where these systems shall be transformed within the mind, because that's where the beliefs are connected with the heart. Anything? I feel like we've shared a lot now. A lot about random things, a little bit of astrology, and yeah, this was really about tapping into the grief, the collective grief, and the current moment. Any last words about?
Well, even in that deep state of grief, we are very much synchronized with the cycles of the all, cycles of the whole. So,
yeah, and I want to encourage everyone that if you are searching for that hope to carry you, to be open to receiving what is all around you, and being open to understanding your personal language, your personal connection with life, and all of the tiny little symbols that are very, very unique to you personally. And watching that language, watching all of those little things unfolding for you, and using that to give yourself hope, to feel like you are being communicated with, and allowing that to help you sort through any tangles, and enabling yourself to understand how to deal with the moment, what to do next, but sometimes doing next is first about slowing down. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. We hope that you found some benefit from this, that you found some inspiration, some heart activation.
It's about.
And we'll come back soon, sharing more updates about the world. And if you're grieving right now, know that you're supported, that you're gonna get through this. And thank you for also feeling your feelings. And I have a lot of hope for the world, actually, to transcend all of what's happening right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of warmth. There's a little in the inner heart.
So I hope that we can be messengers of hope, and that we can inspire other people to keep spreading and sharing that hope.